Test 1, 2, testing. Test 1, 2, testing. Testing 1, 2, testing. Testing 1, 2.
Test 1, 2, testing. Test 1, 2, testing. Testing 1, 2, testing. Testing 1, 2. Test 1, 2, testing. Test 1, 2, testing. Testing 1, 2, testing. Testing 1, 2.
to order the Schenectady City Council Committee meeting for Monday, August 1st, 2022. Our first committee is claims.
Yes. We need to go into executive session, so do you want to save it till the end, or? Okay, so I'd like to have a motion to go into executive session.
Call to order. Call claims to order. And then go to six.
Oh, first I have to call claims to order. Sorry. Now I would like to call for a motion to go into executive session. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we have to go into executive session, folks.
No, that was Mr. Farley. To Mr. Farley. You have to second it. Aye.
Okay, oh, I thought I did.
All right.
Second.
Okay, all in
That's him.
favor? Okay. All right.
So we're going to ask the public to leave. We have to do this in executive session, and we'll bring you back.
Hi, Jim.
No, I think we can leave it hooked in because we just have to turn it on. It's not getting on resolution go off.
got to take it out of order to accommodate this gentleman's schedule. And so I'd like to call to order city development and planning. We have 9 items for the agenda, but we'll just be entertaining item number 1 right now from a request from Metroplex for a 5-year no-cost lease on 100 to 104 J Street. Would you like to come up?
Sorry
You
about
can
the
turn this
change
back
in
on.
order. I have to go to the county legislature
Excuse me,
tonight, so,
second. Are we back on?
busy night.
Oh, I thought it had to be, isn't it?
Yes, you have to turn your microphone back
Yeah,
on.
it needs to stay red.
Okay.
So the county folks need me up there, so I appreciate you very much, Council President, you taking us out of order. So Jim Salengo and his great team at DSIC submitted an application to AARP, which somebody said to me over the weekend. I go, am I a member? And I said, no, I haven't joined yet. I'm trying to push that off. American Association of Retired People. And I thought it was a long shot grant, but they won. It was really great. It was a national competition. They picked a couple of projects in every state, just a handful, 2 or 3. And Jim and his team in Schenectady won. And it's to improve a public space, basically in the downtown area. So congrats to Jim. And Jim is here. Heather Peterson's here, who chairs the DSIC. It's great news. So we, working with the mayor and Andrew Colden and the team, we've looked at the site here on J100, 104J, where the fire was back in 2015. We've been maintaining that lot, mowing it, picking up the litter. The city has site control of both parcels, as I understand it, through the foreclosure process. So we'd like to go forward with a 5-year lease at no cost, and then a 5-year option. So this preserves the ability to do a development deal at that site in the future. Someone wants to do something there on the development side. But we think green space is very important, urban green space in a growing downtown where a lot more residential units are happening. It's important for people to have a place to go. And Jim can talk a little bit more about the plans for the site. But we'd like to, we're going to match the grant that Jim won with another $20,000. And we're going to continue to maintain the property, keep it free of litter, do all the maintenance, the mowing, the snow plowing, whatever we need to do. We've been doing it anyway since 15. So we'd ask for your support to move this forward. I think the downtown community is pretty excited about it. And if you can, I'd just like Jim to just talk about it a little more, because he knows the design stuff about the site a lot better than I do.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. With the grant that we got from AARP, it includes some specific things that go into the space. And a big part of that is ADA compliance, because it's important for them as a granting organization to make sure that spaces that they're helping to fund are inclusive. So it would include some regular picnic tables, some garbage receptacles, some signage, but also would include ADA compliant benches, flower boxes that people could get up to using a wheelchair if necessary. And again, to have a space that is usable in downtown for everybody. And thanks to Ray and everybody at Metroplex and their generosity working with us on the project, they're really going to provide some additional funding to make sure it's well lit. We really want to get some public art in there. There's some, there's a lot of elements. We're really in the beginning stages of talking about what the design will be, but as we all know, it's an extremely prominent place right across from City Hall, and I know the businesses and the community would really appreciate having the space to spend time in downtown.
I have a question actually probably for you, Mr. Gillen. Let's say, for instance, that somebody comes along and wants to put a building there or build something that would, give income to the city. What would our options be then, or once it becomes a green space, is it always a green space?
No, it's not. We're not looking to dedicate this as parkland. It's a really good question. We had some people ask this. It's just a lease, and we have to have some term of the lease to protect the investment from the AARP grant, our match. We've looked at this site. We really haven't had a lot of interest in it because it's very small, and you can only do a handful of units there. We've done thousands of new apartments downtown. So we really are looking more at the value of having it as green space. But the way we're looking to write the contract between Metroplex and the city is to have 5 and 5 and have some ability to terminate the contract contract with some notice on both, on your side. So in case somebody wants to build something there, we have a way to accommodate that. So trying to look at all future options. I know that's something the mayor talked about as well. If somebody wants to come in there and do infill. But right now, we're really excited about greening it up and having a place for people to, and I know the green market is really excited on Sunday as well. Just to be able to, it's so successful and so busy that they can use that as, teaching space, gathering space,
Yes, they've already been at the table, and the green market is extremely excited about
Right.
having
And
access.
we're going to have community input on the design, so we welcome all ideas.
Thank you. Any other questions? Ms. Patrick?
I just want to comment, I think that this fits in really well with the work of the Creative Placemaking Summit also, and especially in terms of being able to extend the excitement of the pedestrian part of J Street a little bit further, so it will help some of the businesses again a little bit further. But I think even for the festivals like Kids Art Fest and some of those things, that it just will provide,
And just
really,
people
really
coming
nice
down to grab
space.
something to eat,
Right, and
take
then
a
go,
little stroll, sit, converse,
yeah, so
tons of benefits.
I think it's great, and congratulations on the grant.
Mr. Farr?
Yeah, I just wanted to second and say congratulations. I thought it seemed to be a pretty competitive grant, so.
And I have to give a special shout out to Amy Sonder on our team, who was really instrumental in getting the grant submitted, so go Amy.
So thank you for that, and I think it's always great when we, now after, being successful in a competitive space, then you have Metroplex stepping in, willing to partner, to kind of leverage, build up that success. So I think that this is a good thing. It sounds like a really good thing for the city, so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And what's the time frame?
As soon as we can. We already had a design meeting last
Okay.
week, hoping that you might approve it.
Oh.
Just, but not that we optimistic, just, they didn't have me in the room because I'm not a good design person, but I know they had a meeting last week. I'm sorry. We got one more question.
Mr. Williams?
Sorry.
Hi, so I know you were mentioning before just wanting to have the lease in place. Was there any considerations like improving social equity to selecting 5 years? Was there any reason for selecting the 5-year terms?
We initially had talked about 10, but I think this same idea of giving both sides flexibility, I think the mayor talked about that, and council is kind of giving people some flexibility in case some other opportunity arises. So it was just kind of a good give and take on that.
And if I can just follow up.
Sure.
Also, you mentioned having public input. Can you describe how you see that or what capacity
Yeah, I
having
think
public
we're
input?
we have we come up with some preliminary designs as we come in and share that, at a meeting and publicly and put it on our website and ask people for input. Absolutely.
Mr. Turner?
Would there be any plaque or indication of what happened there? I know you said to kind of keep that memorialized, that.
Yeah, that's come up in our discussions, and we feel that there's either through maybe dedicating a bench or having just something that just honors, yeah,
Because
that's.
the artwork on the fence now, it just keeps the memory alive to all of us and
Completely
say a little prayer on the way by.
And we feel in the same way too, is this current use is very respectful to the people and what happened there as well, while turning it into a great community
We didn't want to
space.
move on it too quickly either, and that's another reason to do the green space and to have some kind of plaque or memorial there to honor the people.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move it.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
you're
Thank you.
welcome. Thank you for coming. So entertain a motion to recess. City Government.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Recess, we're recessed.
So I'd like to call to order the Public Safety Committee. We have 6 items on the agenda for today. The first, the number of them will be briefed by Mike A.C. Siebert, the first of which is the GIVE grant for fiscal year 2022 to 2023.
Thank you. We know the number of items, might be my record for the number of items. I would like applause. No. No, thank you. They're all kind of related. I'm not going to generalize. I'll touch by each one, but they are all grants given to us by New York State for different reasons. Let's get into the first one on the agenda. I believe is the GIVE grant. I got myself on my report. It's a 2022-2023 GIVE grant. And it's kind of our standard grant that we we receive every year. The amount is being worked out with DCGS. As a county, we receive $785,275. As a city, we're going to get $354,142 on that, out of that money. I included our application, which is very lengthy, but I just wanted you guys to have a better understanding what goes into the application, how much thought is given to it. We work with DCGS on developing it. It's not just us, but there's a lot of effort that goes in within the police department, in the DA's office, in probation, in the sheriff's. I definitely give a shout out to everybody. So it's a cooperation type of agreement. So any questions I can ask, again, we sent a lot of paperwork on it, but I don't want to overwhelm you, but there's just questions.
Chief, any questions or comments from other council members?
It was very comprehensive. I mean, it was really interesting reading, actually, so thank you for
Yeah, if you get
all
the
of
reading,
that.
it's, I mean, it's all data driven, it's, but it's based on, theories and stuff, but that's quite
Yeah.
involved.
Yeah, that's great.
If no further questions or comments, just a motion to approve the grant.
So moved.
Second, any second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to the next item, it's the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Associate Grant, Formula Program, Local Solicitation, fiscal year 2022, through 5 ACC.
Again, this grant is given local solicitation. They basically give us a dollar amount a year that we have to basically work out the numbers with the district attorney's office. Let's be shared with the city police department and the district attorney's office. We have a series of meetings, discussions on this topic every year. And this year, what we like to buy is, for enforcement purposes, is a new motorcycle. I know it sounds kind of off the chart, a little bit different, but presently we have two Harley Davidson motorcycles that were purchased 20-some years ago, and they're okay for training, but not necessarily okay for enforcement. So through our traffic division, I included our application there, which explains kind of in detail how they'll be used and so forth. Again, I can answer any questions. I just don't want to belabor it if you already read it, but just if you have any questions along those lines. Again, we just split the grant with the DA's office, so we each get $24,390.
Any questions or comments?
Actually, I have a question. It has nothing to do with this grant at all. But it's something I've been thinking about for a while, and I'm curious. Whatever happened to the horses?
Well, other than Saratoga, I really can't answer. I don't remember us having horses.
Oh, yeah.
I've been around for a long time, but not that long. If you want them back, we
There are
can
some parts of horses in Canada that come up in.
That's right. I've been called part of a horse before.
I was just curious.
Obviously, some jurisdictions in our area have horses, but there are a lot of maintenance.
Yeah, no, I remember him as a
We get
kid.
more horsepower this way.
Oh, boy.
So
Oh, boy.
you were saying that okay for training, but not good for enforcement. Could you just like elaborate on that?
Yeah, because of the age. Well, what happens is because over the years we have used them for training, we can kind of force to. And we have to certify our officers, every so often to get new officers in there. It's just the age. We've been putting some money into them, and they're just starting to get older. I mean, there's still value to them. I'm not going to say there's not, but it's just one of those things. The newer ones we looked at keep just strictly for control reasons and stuff like that, not for training purposes. So we take the old ones and use them for training.
Okay, so the ones out there, you just use those for training, and then the new ones you would use.
Yeah, I mean, we could use them if we had to have an event like downtown. Sometimes the bigger events downtown, like we do use them at the Christmas parade. It's just nice to maneuver throughout the crowd if you have to, and stuff like that. And we used them the other night at Summer.
Any other questions or comments?
I'll
If
move
not,
it.
make a motion.
We'll look for a grant for horses.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on to the second item, Police Traffic Services Program Grant, New York State Governor's Traffic Safety Committee by ACC.
Again, New York State Traffic Safety Committee, GTSC, and this is for $43,976. This one here, I included the budget on it. It's really used for enforcement of seatbelt usages, aggressive drivers, kind of high accident areas. There are certain events throughout the year at the state that request that we participate in. This funding will pay for some of those parts, when we participate. So, again, it's a yearly grant. Formulas, it's not applied for, it's kind of given to the city and we come up with it.
Any questions or comments? Ms. Porter?
So the grant's only like for $43,900, so how much enforcement, like, that's because you know, it costs a lot for a police officer.
Right, it's hard, I mean, if I can figure out the average cost of a police officer in overtime, but generally it's overtime. It is overtime. I think there's $2,000 or $3,000 for other than personnel costs. So sometimes we buy equipment, like vests, you know, a vest that's gonna be seen at nighttime, or different types of alpha sensors or something along those lines. I don't have a raw answer for you. You know, again, it depends what the officer's pay grade is and who's working it and so forth. Generally speaking, we use our traffic division officers to get kind of first priority of some of these because they're well versed and well trained in that area, and so they're generally at a full scale pay. So I can do the math and shoot you an estimate of how many hours.
Yeah, good.
And what those I look at last year's and see how many hours we actually used. It's quite easy.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments? If not, entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to the next item, which is pedestrian, bike, and automobile crash education grant, the Interstate Governor's Traffic Safety Committee, SCC.
It used to be summer weren't this hard. I just want to put that out there. These grants now they're putting a lot in the summertime. So I do apologize for all these items on here, but this one here is again on the Governor's Traffic Safety Committees. It's $31,150 on dedicated highway safety programs. Was for pedestrian, bike, auto crashes, that area. Again, sometimes there's initiatives that the state puts on that we would participate in, and this would again use as funding for those programs, as well as our own initiatives. So it's similar to the last one we spoke about.
Again, any questions or comments? If not, I entertain a motion.
I'll move it.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
And the last item is Accident Officer Safety Plan by ACC.
Good. I can figure something else for you. Excuse me.
It's a baby.
The last item.
This is something that the council receives a presentation on about a month ago. I think the council president or the mayor offered me up to be tased, but I don't know if that's part of the plan. No, but they came back with a proposal. This is really for discussion purposes. Chief Clifford is out of town tonight, couldn't be here. It's more or less for discussion purposes. They gave us a proposal. It's kind of all-inclusive of everything they spoke about a month ago. We wanted to have a hard copy in case there's, want to make notes and so forth. Again, we send it to you. I can answer a lot of questions, but we as a department, we researched other funding opportunities that we had for this program itself. The contract we're looking at is a 10-year contract. We do a 5-year contract, but there's a caveat in here that says that if funding is not, if the council does not fund it, can remember the exact word, we can get out of the contract. So it's kind of like a safety net, if you would. With that said, though, I can present this formula in a couple weeks, or monies that we had for it, but we do feel we can cover the cost for the first couple of years. Now, there might be other grant monies we can catch after that, and we just can't say that right now, so we can't obligate any monies past the next couple of years. But we do have money for the next couple of years that would pay for it. Obviously, for additional grants and other funding streams that we have, but it'd be a commitment on the city's behalf to join in for a 10-year program. Again, if there's financial struggles or there's a catch-all to come in, and I can refer to legal on that, but hopefully it's strong enough to support anything that something happens down the road that we couldn't financially, as a city, financially support. There's a lot of moving parts to this whole plan. So it's an officer safety plan that we spoke about, includes the tasers, body cameras, virtual reality training, the storage of such, which is big, and the sharing of data. I know something else on it. In-car video system as well. So it's kind of a soup to nuts as far as everything's included on the plan. So, again, I can answer hopefully any questions you have, but it's comprehensive. So.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Toro?
Oh, yeah. So you'd be interested in the whole package?
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes. As a partner, we're recommending this.
Right.
Yes.
And each officer would have a taser gun
Yes.
during the program?
Each uniform.
Uniform,
Yes.
okay. That's my only question.
And everybody have a body camera.
Right.
They have extra body cameras, some extra for detectives,
Right.
not every detective, but they have them at their ready.
At their disposal,
Same with
absolutely.
in-car video systems. And then the virtual reality is a big training component, that we can change up scenarios and so forth. I don't know if everybody's seen it demonstrated or not, but it's pretty, state of the art. So, and what's also with this, in the plan, it refreshes our equipment every so often. Like, I know the body cameras, I believe it's every 3 years or 3.5 years. So then we get new body cameras. What's nice about that, you're getting the latest technology. So even though we're spending some money, we'd have to, like, our body cameras now are 3.5, 4 years old. They kind of get end of life. So we have to come up with some kind of replacement for them. And this is kind of just that phase of it. But in this program, they replenish them every so much. So I think we get 3 upgrades with this 10-year plan.
And there's a significant discount that they're giving us as well by bundling all these services. I think I saw that. I feel like it was like $2 million or something.
Yeah, the math is all there. I don't have the raw number on top of my head right now, but yes, there is a big one. It's really kind of what has to do with going from 5 years to 10-year plan.
Okay.
So they did offer quite the incentive to go to the 10-year plan.
It was a big incentive.
Mr. Farley?
Yeah, so that was going to be my question. I was going to say, so that was the 5, so going into the 10-year contract will give us some significant cost savings over the 5-year contract.
Correct. The monthly costs, I can get all these numbers for you. If you have any questions, I can come up with the answers for them, but yes, there is. And you'll see, basically see 4 packets in there, if you haven't reviewed it yet, but one is just by Axon, just kind of their what the whole program is about. Then there's broken down to in-car video systems and the costs associated. Oh, I'm sorry, the interview rooms are in there also. So the interview rooms, which we have 8 rooms in the department, they'd all be covered in there. They would have the body cameras, or the body camera, interview room separate, the in-car video system separate, and then you have the body cameras and the tasers as one. So that's one package. And then when you see on the charts, again, I don't know this, I've read it, but there's a savings. You'll see this. They actually put what the savings would be over the course of the 10-year programs.
And so with the body cams that we have now, is that what was the lifetime of that contract that we're currently?
It wasn't really a contract. We bought those outright. We had grant funding, so we bought them outright. We also house it on an in-house server. It's not. This will be a cloud-based network. What this system does is it ties everything in. So if you have an interview in an interview room, that also gets linked to the body camera, which gets linked to the in-car video system, which gets linked to your taser if you use it. So it's kind of, I think they call it the officer safety program. And what happens is it puts them all together. With the body cameras we have now, we actually just received a grant this year to upgrade some, buy additional cameras and stuff like that. But we could use that, some of the money I was talking about before to fund this program. But it's, those were bought outright. We didn't have a 5, we didn't want to do a lease to buy type thing. Panasonic, I'm not sure, that's what we have now, Panasonic, and I'm not sure if they had it back then. 5 years ago, we did check on Axon. We did demo their product, and very good product, but it was a little costly. Since then, they've come up with the development this consolidated plan, lack of a better word, and it just kind of impresses us. There's not that many out there that have it. Some do, there's other ones that do, but they don't. They kind of bundle it in such a good way. A lot of agencies are going to it just because it simplifies it. And with the demand on right now for discovery rules, our turnaround time, this is hopefully, we got into the redaction part of it just to try some stuff, and there's a lot of redaction, but what happens is it just all gets bundled together, so we don't have to spend the time to kind of put it all together, so just...
Any other?
Again,
Again,
I think when you saw the demonstration a couple of months ago, I think it was, I think that really stood out for me, that now we'd be having all of these services under one, under one umbrella, so that everything was interconnected with everything else. So I think it makes it more efficient as well in terms of the officers' work, in terms of what they have to do. Even in the reporting stages, that kind of thing. So I liked that idea that this was, everything.
Yeah, even when we have foils with Corporation Counsel, we have, the discovery with the DA's office, we have to send stuff to the Public Defender's office. This will link everybody up also on the back end there, so it makes it a little more efficient.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, this is a 5-year deal with a 5-year option. Is that correct? Yeah. I had asked Chief Clifford to put that in, so we're getting the 10-year pricing, but 5 years out, again, when we bought the Panasonic body cameras, they were the best. Exxon now is not one of the leaders, probably the leader in the market, so the state police are going to that platform. I think the city of Albany is there, New York City,
The school, I think even has it.
and even the school. But so there's compatibility with other agencies. But again, it gives us an option to get out. And there is the basic option, if the council chose not to fund it in any given year, we could terminate it. The reality, once you lock into this, you're going to have to do it for a period of time for the record management, and the equipment deal is very good in this, where they're going to give us the upgrades. A lot of this is done remote now, so that it's not like somebody on site, but it will, again, complement some of the police reforms we're doing, just public engagement with information to be able to turn it around in a relatively quick period of time and have it standardized, so that today there's still some hocus pocus of moving from one platform to another platform depending on which equipment that we're using or not using.
So at least for me, I definitely appreciate you coming here and giving us these full and in-depth briefings. I think whenever I hear new and shiny thing, I'm always trying to find what's hidden in the closet. And I think it's definitely a selling point to know that a lot of the other municipalities are switching this platform. But I do appreciate having the option to kind of grade and see if this meets our functionality within the city before jumping down and finding a new Panasonic, which I think we all don't want to do. So what I would be excited to see is just how you're anticipating these new features adapting into your standard operating procedures. So have you guys gotten into how you're going to evolve or update those?
Yeah, I mean, we do all this now, just on different systems, so really the transition shouldn't be too bad. As the mayor cited, several cities that have it, we've actually reached out to them and had conversations with them to make sure that we can evolve into this. They have become the leader of the whole technology. They're kind of going way above and beyond. They're even starting to get into a CAD system, an RMS system, which is record management and abbreviated dispatch. They're not there yet, but they have it in their incubator type of programs. So they're kind of just leading the forefront. Sometimes until you pull the switch, you don't know. I mean, because we have some growing pains with Panasonic. It's just mostly the downloading of it electronically. We have antennas working with John Puccio and his crew within the city that, now when we get within a couple blocks of the police department, it starts to download it. And eventually throughout the city, it's going to, do that same type of thing. So we've come a long way where we are. The Panasonic system, I'm not going to say is a failure, but they don't have all the fingers this has to go together. And so that's why we're kind of excited about it. Again, I can't sit here and tell you that we hit that switch, it's going to be perfect, but they have proven it in so many other areas that it's kind of been proven to us. So, and I'm not an IT person, other than I know there's a button you press and it goes on. I know there's a button that goes off.
All right, Mr. Farley?
Yeah, so kind of to the mayor's point, I was wondering, something that was really stood out to me last time we discussed this was like the cloud and the ability to kind of, for that storage space. And then, so my question then, and kind of is again, I guess maybe it's a two-part question, having that cloud storage space would, I would imagine, make it doable for officers to have their body cam on for an entirety of shifts. And the second, I guess, question is around the police reform, could you kind of talk a little bit about how does this increase transparency and how does it align with the police reform that the city can do?
I still don't think you're going to have the battery life on out if you do long enough to, because it's still the battery life for the camera. It's not the battery life for the cloud. It's not the uploading it to the cloud. So I don't think you'd be able to have it on all day. Nor would I recommend that, because that's kind of a lot, an officer walk around constantly on. But that's a whole different discussion. Forgot the second part.
So I was just trying to, the mayor was talking about how this kind of is in line with some of the police reform So I was just wondering, like,
It
where,
is, again, in the FOIL world and the events of the world, yes, it'd be easier to grab that information and be transparent. The writing of our policies now and our procedures is a lot of it's geared around police reforms and in subtle ways that you might not see, but it's just to have the transparency if something goes on. We're doing a lot of more community engagement and trying to sell that, okay, we have no problem. Our offices endorse all this technology. We want it. It actually, 9 times or probably 97 times out of 100, it protects them. There are a few times it bites them too, so, but that's just part of the system. So without getting into, I can't rattle off the top of my head specific reforms that we're talking about that we could, I could say this goes into it.
but it might change some internal policies as well.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, just our operational policies. And again, when we first created body cameras, we had a steering committee for our policy, and it was made with a lot of community members. I'm not sure if anybody from the council was there. Okay, were you there also? I can't remember. There was a few from the city council. I think we invited 3 people from the city council at the time, and then but we had a broad range from clergy to, I mean, it was kind of very dynamic. DA's office, obviously, and other members of there were like 20 people or 25 people. So we didn't overload it with one particular section. PBA was there, so. And that's how we design our policy. Doesn't mean we don't constantly, look at to revamp and make it better. If there's something that happens out there that we want to, do it, so it's constant. It's I don't want to say it's a fluid policy because it is a policy in stone, but doesn't mean we can't change at a moment's notice. And not to get off topic, but the way we have Lexapol system, which is our policies now. All our policies are online. It's transparency, if you would. To change a policy nowadays, it's just so much easier than it was 5 years ago. And the reason I say that is the technology. I have it on my phone. I have an app on my phone. I can call up any policy anytime. So if we want to make a change, we push it out. Within 24 or 48 hours, all the officers have to accept it. And then that change is known to the officers. So it's, I guess I'm getting a little bit off course. All these things are important to the whole makeup of the police department, our system. So.
So as Assistant Chief Sieber said, I was on the original body camera committee, and at the time Panasonic was right up there as one of the leaders. The evolution of the technology and what Axon's done is leaps and bounds, and the ecosystem they're creating really creates a system where it's going to be so much more efficient. And to your point about the video downloads and such, one of the big issues that we were concerned about at the time was the downloading in the servers. And the servers are very expensive, so much so that we actually tried to get some money from the state to really deal with that issue. And now with it being in the cloud and unlimited, we don't have to worry about that. So
before it wasn't unlimited. 5 years ago when we did all this, it wasn't, so it was super expensive. I'm not saying it's not as cheap now, but 5 years ago it was more than it is today. So the prices actually dropped, and we actually anticipated dropping a little more because they're getting more efficient with the cloud. We went with the server, unconsciously so, because we wanted to keep it all in-house and have control of it, not have to pay the annual cost. But now, again, there's so much out there. It can be overwhelming from a management standpoint to kind of, massage it all together, get it to the right place, back it up on the server. We do spend money every year upgrading our servers, to add more memory on it, so forth. So I don't know how many terabytes we're up to. Terabytes, that's an IT thing.
nice.
But I just want to think that, anyway.
Ms. Wharton? Go ahead.
So you say that you have a couple years money, and you want to enter into a 5-year with a possible 5-year renewal. So at this point in time, you're asking the council to review this or approve this?
Yeah, again, we'd like to come back in 2 weeks. Again, the chief apologized, couldn't be here tonight, but we're going to kind of absorb this because this is a big lift. And what happens is, yes, we have money that, some of the money we feel has already been approved. And I say that because through some capital projects, we did some funding for certain in-car cameras, upgrading in-car cameras too. Other funding sources, DA's office, we got some monies from an account, a seizure account, whatever they gave us last year, for our interview rooms. We have all this, and I can explain this in 2 weeks if you wish, and kind of break it down to where this money's coming from. However, it's just going forward after that right now, we don't have the money, so just trying to be transparent. And not like my kids, when they come on, Dad, it's money, they come back next day, want more.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Just wanted to go back to the storage component of this. Again, going back when we first put body cameras in, the business model from suppliers were to discount the hardware a little bit, but to encourage people to use their cloud storage. And it's the nature of this where we're just recording more video, more audio, more evidence is going in it. And so the cost went up dramatically. There were a lot of municipalities who put body cameras in. That was a good idea, it was all great, but then when they got hit with the actual storage fees, there was some sticker shock. We did that internally and managed it, again, I think fairly successfully. The business model is shifting now where the cloud storage is becoming cheaper and there's more vendors in the market which keep the overall cost down. And it's one thing I like about this is the long-term contract price that pretty much guarantees us what the number is going to be, even though I will tell you today, no matter what the chief says or anybody else, and how much data that we're going to have going out 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, I just know that number is going to be bigger than whatever we think today. It's just the nature of the business, whether it's policing, whether it's firefighting, whether it's code enforcement. It's the way computer technology is, the way the information is generated. So that gives us a peace of mind in terms of protecting our ability going forward. The other aspect of it is the overall total cost. I've gone over some of the scenarios with Chief Clifford. There may be an option. What Exion's given us here is kind of a global price for it. Now, we may be able to pay a little bit more up front, and then they would give us greater discounts in some of the outer years. Do we use some of the AARP or the ARPA money, not the AARP, that's committed to lawn across the street. But there may be ways to get things so that it's, again, financially stable going forward, where, again, there's some things that have been budgeted for this. Want to make sure, in terms of sustainability from the fiscal side, that we're doing things that are prudent and that are being able to have reasonable expectations in terms of the overall budget assumptions that we're going to have going forward. And I think some of this will also improve the efficiency of the officers in the field, which there's a savings on that, even though sitting here today, you can't say, is that $1,000, is it $100,000? There will be efficiencies that we will get from the implementation of this platform. And that's why, look at this for 2 weeks, and as you go through it, you may have ideas saying, well, do we pay more for this up here? Do we lay the payment? Do we do that? That's what part of the discussion that we want.
And one of the things that they're striking on is the efficiencies of the officer. After every call, they have to what they call tag their videos, and they have so there's time consumptions here. By having all one product, the idea is it pre-populates a lot of information. Not all of it. There's still like 5 different tag categories that are tag, but it probably cuts down the efficiency to be, just say 5 minutes a call. I'm not sure how long it takes. But I'm just putting a number out there. But per call, times 80,000 calls, there's some efficiency there to be had. So. And again, yes, it's going to be front-loaded with funding. If you want, and then it'd be a cheap as the year goes on. I also want to add, not to get ahead of ourselves for, I'll be lobbying come budget time, but one of the big things that, as we prepared our budget this year, and is the licensing fees and the agreements, maintenance fees are just going up and up and up. We embrace technology, but they are going up. So if we can lock in something, at least it's a known price. Until,
10 years.
Well, I know for me, if there are any other comments or questions, having the opportunity to deep dive into this, I'd absolutely appreciate having Chief Clifford here in another 2 weeks. I think it's no brainer that this is, as Mr. Tommy highlighted, just light years ahead of where we currently are. So I look forward to how this looks in practicality here in the city. So
And if you wish, I don't want to offer them up, but I did talk to Chief about that. If you would like somebody from Axon here in 2 weeks also, I'm sure they'd be willing to come out and just talk again about it, you know, as long as I don't get tased. Any questions? Do I have anything else on the agenda?
No, I think you're it.
All right, thank you.
Table discussion for 2 weeks.
Thank you very much.
And the last item will be request state legislation for enforcement of traffic control violations by Mr. Palmy.
So first of all, I need to thank Mr. Colden for his invaluable help and expertise in putting this together. I really do appreciate it, so thank you very much. So home rule legislation is something that's necessary for municipalities such as ourselves to use some of the technologies that can be now used to enforce some of the speeding as well as noise violations in municipalities. It's kind of an antiquated system in some ways. We know better than the state how we need to patrol and enforce some of the issues we have in our community. And this asks for the state to expand the home rule law to allow us to implement these enforcement tools. And at the very least, if they're not going to do that, allow us to do a demonstration program, which would allow us to do it as a pilot and show that this actually works.
Any questions or comments? Ms. Becker?
So this, would this could be a stupid question, but does this help us get rid of home rule in a broader sense, or is it just specific to what we have? Because we talked about that a few weeks ago at one of these meetings.
Potentially would expand the home rule aspect to, and Mr. Colden, correct me if I go wrong here, of some of the enforcement tools for like speeding and noise.
Okay.
So it would expand that aspect of the law.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Ms. Porter?
Yeah, so are there like really specifics that we're looking at? I know you said including but not limited to. So I'd just like to know like specifically what we would be asking for in this case. Right in, go ahead.
It's right here where Section 10 of the New York State Municipal Home Rule Law, where it pertains to cities, towns, and villages to implement these enforcement tools such as speed cameras, red lights, and sound meters. And that's what we're looking for.
Okay, so it's Section 10, but everything's not listed here. It would, so if I looked in Section 10, I would find exactly everything it's referring to?
Yep.
Okay.
Mr. Colden?
Mr. Colden.
Thank you. Demonstration programs have been permitted under state law. So essentially, to have a demonstration program, there has to be special legislation at the state to do that. And they've done it, the state has allowed it in certain municipalities. The problem with the demonstration programs, this is just my opinion obviously, is that there's a sunset provision for those programs. So if it's a 5-year program, unless the state takes action to extend it, eventually it ends. It's just a demonstration program. So it doesn't go on, for years and years and years. New York City is a little different because they do have speed cameras, and generally they've been doing it in school zones, right, where people obviously exceed the speed limit. Obviously there's, public safety issues, especially with children being around, families. My understanding from the way Mr. Palmini spoke with me about it, this would be a bit more expansive in terms of obviously the red light cameras, but also speed cameras, not just around schools, but just in our city streets. Again, we would need special legislation either way here, really, to either amend home rule law to disallow municipalities to implement these devices, or very specific in creating a demonstration program in vehicle and traffic law for the city. It would be city specific, it wouldn't be for everyone.
Ms. Doral?
Yes, thank you. I think, just in speaking to, and receiving comments from, we need to stand up and do something about the noise and speeding and safety in the city. So I commend John for putting this together. Thank you.
Ms. Patrick?
I feel the same way. I mean, I think that we've been trying to think about all these different traffic calming kinds of measures. I had to get that in, my new language that I just learned in the process of speaking to residents and doing some research around the speeding issue. I think that it's just been such a prevalent concern of so many residents, people coming to council to talk to us, people emailing us, calling us, to talk about what are we going to do about these traffic issues, that I definitely fully support this, and thank you for putting it together for us.
Ms. Porter?
And what is the cost associated with this, or do we know that yet?
There's no cost with asking for home rule
For
for the change.
I'm looking at the demonstration project, what we have to do, and would there be some cost in the red light cameras? We don't currently have them.
That's in the next aspect in Finance Committee.
That's in the next aspect.
The other piece.
Right. But we can't really do anything without this piece.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, we need to approve making a demonstration, and then in the next committee, you'll identify the cost associated with it?
No, I'm asked, we need the legislation piece passed regardless. The cost aspect is, if you read the aspect in terms of the noise violation under the Finance Committee, asks for costs to be associated in 4 weeks. Just because we get asked for, and even if we get home rule legislation changed, doesn't mean we have to do it.
Great, no, I remember that in the estimate. I think continuing on with Ms. Porterfield's comment of enforcement, which you mentioned, how would this specifically lower it? Because I think, as Ms. Patrick mentioned, ticketing, but would there be a staffing expectation from the police to help facilitate this?
These are typically done automatically with the technology, and it's sent out a ticket and people get them in the mail. That's typically how it's done.
Mr. Coleman?
Just to touch base on that question, Councilperson Williams. So my understanding is with red light cameras and with speed cameras, a ticket would be issued not to the driver but to the registered owner of the vehicle. Generally, it's not considered a moving violation because you're not actually catching the driver in the act. You're catching the registered owner who's apparently allowed somebody to drive. That's my understanding of it. I know maybe somebody may have gotten caught in, by a speed camera at some point in time, but it wouldn't have been points. It would be just a fine. The camera's there. The camera catches the vehicle in motion. It registers. Let's say it's a speed camera. It registers the speed the vehicle's going. Catches a photo of the license plate, and then they run the license plate and essentially issue the ticket against the registered owner.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
And so
Yes, Porter.
and all the fines, any fines that we collect, this is a city, that we collect fines, the money comes to us.
It would be the same as it would be with other violations like that, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Equivalent of a parking ticket, and assuming the state legislature adopted that as they have with other ones. Sometimes our friends in Albany, they saw a revenue source, might take a little bit for themselves.
That's possible?
Yes.
A surcharge, perhaps.
Any other questions or comments?
So are we talking about actually the demonstration project or the actual asking for the home rule?
Asking for a home rule, and if they don't do that,
So you're asking both all at the same time, so you're asking if they do the home rule, and if not, to do the demonstration
at the
project?
very least, the demonstration project.
Got it. Thank you.
So I'll move it.
Okay, I second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any other business to fall before Public Safety Committee? If there is none, I'd like a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Did you call the
Public
order?
Safety Committee is adjourned.
Did you call the order of finance?
So the first item for the Finance Committee is the purchase of the 2022 Chevy Tahoe command vehicle with Chief Marine.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Chief.
I'm going to try to make a very simple topic, not complicated. See how good I do. Okay, so we have a capital project executing right now. There was for 4 vehicles that we were approved earlier this year. And everything is going fine. One of the vehicles, the option package changed. So for all 4 of them, we were using what's called piggyback language. Another department purchased other, it's similar to a state contract. It's just that we can use that language to purchase our 4. Then there was an option change in one of the Tahoes. And the purchasing agent said that the piggyback language would not fit that. Because of that, he advised us to put it out for a bid, which we did. The result was a $1,600 increase for that Tahoe, at least on the surface. That Tahoe comes with the lights already on them. If the lights didn't come on them, we would have had to send it out, and the $1,600 pretty much would have been a wash. So it's because we had to put it out for a bid that I have to come to you and ask for your approval. There's really not any change. Although I said it was $1,600, when you look at the whole thing, it's really not. And the money is there from what was already approved.
Are there any questions? All right, can I have a motion? I'll second. All those in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is proposed ARPA allocations with Mayor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some items for the council's consideration and discussion. We're going through the budget process. Some of these projects, I have to have some decision by the council so I know how much money we have or don't have for some of these things going forward. The bigger ones, we talked about the city swimming pool. Moving ahead with the design. There's going to be additional expenses depending on what we do with the additional site work, with the parking lot, lighting, pathways, going over to Music Haven, A Diamond, and some of the ancillary work. There, and this list that attached is again, we're at Jerry Burrell Park, looking at the projects within the golf course, the vacant house rehab program. We're going to do round of foreclosures starting next month, or starting this month, in August.
Hopefully by the end of this month, yes.
The paperwork, Ron Gardner has a robust plan in place for 818 Albany Street to fix that up. Working with some of the other training organizations, some of the building trades to move that forward. And some of this money we want to be able to take some of the houses that we're going to take on foreclosure and be able to rehab them using some of that workforce. And there's also one from BCNI for their owner-occupied home repair and rehabilitation program. They had submitted that. Some of that I would like to maybe have been able to start that a little bit earlier this year, but we're here now, and so I'm asking council for consideration on this and consider these numbers discussion points where there are references where could live with these. It'd be terribly difficult if you cut them. Gave me a little bit more, it would be easier. But want to have things that we can move forward for this year's budget, and then also know how much money is available out of the first round of funding, because then we have other groups who have submitted plans and scenarios, which because of the timing may or may not still be applicable this year, and some of those budget assumptions may have changed. So then you have to then go from this into review and start thinking the allocations of that second round of funding, which we have received.
Are there any questions? Ms. Patrick?
So on the projects, I'm going to specifically ask about the golf course project. So there still would be a need for more money after this. What's the plan for, would that perhaps be part of the second 26 or?
Again, on that, there's a couple factors in that where I look at our recreation program, so we're putting money in the A-Diamond, we're doing things in the tennis courts, the music haven, the golf course. Again, it's trying to create something for everybody. Our watering system today is extremely inefficient. It's an old system, and some of the staff from the golf course have been there, talked about where you just turn it on and let it go. The numbers there are, I will call them good ballpark. With the way bids have been going out and coming in, I can't guarantee that number. The 3.5, is Mr. Wallen here?
No.
So I'm looking, take the temperature of the city council, what's your level of interest in it? And again, matching this up on what we might be able to do this year versus next year. Some of these, what would we be able to get out of funding from revenue from the golf course, or some of these other housing projects, what money we have in other areas. And it's just that we have to start the process and start moving forward.
Yes, my question is related to that. It seems to me it would make more sense to fund the projects. These are projects that help everybody in the city. They're also revenue generating projects. They're going to make various neighborhoods better with some of the housing aspects. That's kind of where I'm at with this. Mr. Williams?
I would say for me, I think we've made considerations to date. I think referencing the most recent one, which was funding the school program over the summer, which I imagine was a success. I think I'd want to make sure equal considerations were made to all the projects. I definitely know that there were a number of other interest items throughout the city that I'd like to make sure were given equal considerations. And it does not mean that I do not equally value the golf course, even though I'm not an avid golfer. I think looking at the magnitude and proportion of what the Central Park pool, which is already in process, if I'm speaking incorrectly, it garners a significant amount of what's left. So I think wanting to make sure I was considerate of the time of the people that were investing in the review process, making sure that we were not giving second or afterthought considerations to some of the other items that still were submitted to receive funding from this first pool. And I think for me, I do not think it's a position that I'm willing to take of, we'll try again the next round, because we've been intentional letting people know this pot of money is not, there is no next time. So I think people want to make sure that the items that they put forward, the items that they voted for, the items that they vocalized for are given those intentional thinking points. So for me, I think it's waiting the 2 weeks or being able to see all the projects collectively and then making a determination.
Anyone else? Ms. Porterfield?
Yeah, and like with the housing, so we all had the committee gave the recommendations, et cetera. So I see that we have some money here for housing, but there were multiple applications submitted for housing. So to me, it makes sense to look at them collectively as opposed to funding these two particular ones and then the other housing things being separate and apart. And at this point in time, we're down to like $2 million out of the original, a little bit less than that, based on this. So I think that we should look collectively at the housing and at all of them to see the other applications that were put out. And after people saw the agenda, I did receive emails and had conversations that people were like wondering, like, so, you know, when are the other things that are beyond what the city is requesting going to be looked at? So I understand we've already made the commitment for the Central Park pool, and we should, you know, to move forward with that. But I think that, you know, we should be looking at the collective applications, what the ARPA, what the city development and planning has suggested, and said that we should fund. And they've also said, in addition to that, that not only will they have to look at what they want to fund, but they also have to look at where those organizations are at this point in time in terms of their funding. Some have already gotten additional funding. That's an absolute. So I think all of that needs to be taken into consideration in a collective way. So as you know, because right now we've been basically kind of piecemealing it out, and so I think we do need to look at this to big picture it. And as I said, the park is already done, and you know, let's move forward. But there are other items that have been requested funding. I think we should be taking a look at in the 2 weeks. When I did speak to the mayor about it, he did say in 2 weeks the other projects would, other things would come forward. So if we could hold everything except the pool, which we already approved in a resolution quite a few months ago, then and just look big picture at all of it, I think it just makes sense.
Patrick?
I don't think that we actually did approve the pool a few months ago. I'd have to go back and look. I think what we approved was the money to do the design, do the study.
Okay.
But we have not approved this as
Since
well.
we haven't gone out for final bids, and again, that pool, and no question in my mind, above the $4.5 million that we're carrying as a budget.
So you think it's going to be even higher than this? Is that what you said?
It may be in the $5.5 or $6 million range, again, depending on the parking lot, the walkway, some of the lighting, the other ancillary improvements that will be made there, along with some of the upgrades. Want to put some stadium seating at the tennis courts, because we're taking the old tennis stadium down, but to protect those courts where we have a high level of utilization now by the U.S. Tennis Association and just city residents.
Ms. Porter.
So the 450 that we approved was just for the design. Is that a part of this number?
It's not, this is on top of it, it's a part of the number, it's delineated on the other page, but it's not on the, what will be the final request to fund the pool.
And I thought that we approved it because I know they're already tearing stuff down up there.
Right, that's site work is part of the design.
Okay.
Ms. Patrick?
So I just want to also, again, point out that I agree that the costs are just going to continue to rise. If we had been able to do the irrigation system when we first started talking about it, which was at least 2.5 years ago, I mean, actually predates my time on council, but I know that we've been talking about it for the 2.5 years that I've been on council. It started, I think, at like a couple of million, and now you can see that this is 3.5 million. So, you know, I think along with all these other things, the Jerry Burrell project, I mean, personally, I just think we should be trying to finish that project. I think that it's, you know, it's an essential park. It's in a neighborhood that definitely, you know, we know that folks want these things to happen in that park. So I hear what you're saying, but, you know, I think we have to start making some decisions. I am glad to hear that perhaps we're going to hear about the rest of the projects in a couple of weeks, because I think that process happened in March or April. So it will be kind of good to be able to hear and see, you know, what the other projects are. But we still then are going to have to do a decision-making process around whether we are going to even think about the recommendations further. So, you know, it's August. You know, I just feel like we're we've been dragging our feet for months on this. This is just my personal opinion. And it's frustrating. And I think it's frustrating to folks out there as well, because I think we're all getting calls and emails about, you know, what's happening with the ARPA funding. So I'm just
And I want to be
saying
clear,
that
some of
these-
these ones I'm focused on this first round of discussion tonight is they will have a direct impact on what goes into the proposed 2023 budget. And I know, like the council, I think that just one swoop through and they give you the budget. There are 2, 3, 4 times budgets are reviewed internally, going over the different scenarios, so that when it comes to council, again, it's a well thought out document that, again, hopefully reflects stability in the city and sustainability going forward. But I'm going to need to know some of these projects, whether the council is inclined to move ahead with them or not move ahead with them, and what I'm going to have to do when I submit the budget to you in October. And where you think that's down the road quite a ways, it's not from the internal review and some of the assumptions. So like, you don't fund some of these, and said, no, we're not doing housing rehab or another one, and I've got to look at other assumptions for potential revenue or expenses or just our overall ability to undertake some of these projects.
Ms. Victoria?
Oh, thank you. I'd advocate first for city projects with that one-time lump of ARPA money. We're never going to get it again. There's things that we need to address here in the city. The mayor's put this list together, and I would tend to go along and advocate for him, with him. How to spend this money. As far as the golf course, no one has to be an avid golfer, even though I am. But you can't imagine the revenue.
We'll get you up there, Mr. Williams.
The revenue that comes back into our city. Who comes to golf? It's one of our gems here, alongside Central Park. The water that we produce here in Schenectady, the golf course. People come to our community for that. So I would advocate for the projects that the mayor has put before us. Last evening, I will say, I volunteered at Music Haven, and gosh, when I got there was laughter and joy in the pool. People had barbecues going, they had balloons up, they had birthday parties. The park was alive. I mean, it was baseball on the A-Diamond, baseball on over by the duck pond. It was just, and then Music Haven, it was just, you know, something we need to be proud of. So again.
And just on that irrigation system, our largest consumption of electricity is used or is done by the pumps at the wellhead on Rice Road. So again, today we use a lot of water to irrigate that, and I'm looking for ways to reduce that to make it more efficient, and it'll end up saving on our electric bill also other places.
Mr. Williams?
I think it's worth noting that the continuing narrative that the council is slow to action or not acting, I think, is giving a wrong perception of what we're doing here. And I think, again, the most recent monies that we allocated was for the summer program, which I was initially opposed to for the same reasons of wanting to make sure we gave time and consideration to people's schedules and changing those to review these projects, but understanding that we were in a time-sensitive situation and we needed to make sure that we were considerate of the kids over the summer. I understood that. I think it's important to make sure we're not rushing to decisions just for the sake of time. And I know that we are put in a situation due to just some of the extended timelines from the review process, but we are so close. Some of my questions are, why are we not reviewing the collective projects tonight? I think is a fair question. But for me right now, I think it's wanting to make sure that we are not spending 3/4 of the remaining budget from the first allotment, again, without looking at the collective projects. So I think it's making sure that we're focusing on the true timeline, which is when monies need to be allocated and spent, and we are nowhere near there yet. And I think although we are feeling pressure from the community, part of the reason of being public advocates is making sure that we can read between those lines and understand when and when not to react.
Ms. Porterfield.
And I just wanted to provide some additional information. We talked about Jerry Burrell Park, so that went out to bid and no one came back with bids. So we got a little bit more time. It has to go out to bid again because no one submitted a bid on that particular project. And also I know that one of the, like BC&I just also got some additional money themselves, so that might be covering some of the costs. That's what we're looking at here. So again, I say that we should be looking at other monies that other people have already received, or if they're looking at their project and say we can no longer do it because it took so long. And there's some smaller projects that are asking not like for significant amounts of money that we, could be looking at and funding, and that still provide a service to people from all over the city. So I think that, it warrants us looking at the big picture.
Mr. Farrell.
So if I understand that there's some intentionality around why we brought the items forth today is because of some planning that needs to happen around like what we can leverage in the budget going forward, right? Okay.
So I guess I will just go around and ask where people are on this and see what we have in terms of support. Start over there. Ms. Patrick.
I would support this.
Mr. Carley.
I still have some questions about it. So I have some questions around the timeline. So let me give me a minute to kind of think about that.
Sure. Mr. Williams.
And this vote would still be poised to let us voting at a committee, correct?
Correct, but it
So I'm saying that.
warrants people hearing what we have to say.
Yeah.
Ms. Porterfield.
So I'm, comfortable with Central Park. We're already moving ahead. We already know that project's going to move. I could even support the golf course. However, I think we really should be, like I said, this one project went out to bid. We got no bids on it. There's other folks who are involved with some of the other projects where they got additional money. And in addition to that, there's other housing projects that were submitted that I feel should have the opportunity to be looked at the same time. And we're really spending down. And again, there's a collective of some of them are smaller projects that warrant us looking at them. So I could not fully support this. There are some of it that I could support, but not fully.
Mr. Toro.
So the guideline to spend this money, it's like 2024, ARPA money, right, 2024. So, and I don't think that we should wait. I think we should move forward and spend the money. I don't think there's any need to wait a year and a half before we give someone money and then decide, spend it before we lose it. I like Ms. Porterfield's notation there about there's certain projects she would like to and certain ones that she wouldn't. Thank you for that. That being said, though, I am in support of this agenda here.
Are you ready or do you want me to go?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm in support of it. I think we have a one-time situation and it allows us as a city to use money for various projects, big projects that we don't need to borrow, that we don't need to use reserves for. I think that's a big deal, so we don't have to have tax considerations with these. In particular, some of these are revenue-generating projects. I just think he wasn't even asking for the entire amount, so there is room for leveraging that money with either various maneuvers financially or with some other projects. And that allows us to move forward and get things going before costs go up even more. Mr. Farley.
So what I'm hearing here is that we're right now trying to kind of understand, kind of checking the pulse of the council as to where we're supporting these projects. And so I want to say that I support this. I think that we want to make sure that we're moving in a way that is efficient and effective. My largest, I guess, concern would be what is the cost of the lane, right? So that's really, so when I say, when I was trying to take time to think, when I was thinking, that was the question I was trying to kind of ruminate in my head, like, is there a cost associated with waiting until we kind of are looking at everything in the totality? And so that is the kind of the piece of information that I don't know that I'm clear on right now. If we're talking about 2 weeks, but I would support this stuff.
All right, so there is a general consensus. I will, even though I know it won't, I'll ask for a motion to move this. I will move it. There's not a second, so the motion fails. That being said, is there general support? I know Ms. Porterfield spoke in favor of it, to move the Central Park and Golf Course irrigation money to...
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Again, I put these forward because of their potential for significant budget impacts going forward. I don't mind holding this for 2 weeks and looking at some of the other factors. And I respectfully disagree with Mr. Williams in terms of the Summer Youth Employment Program. That was not a bright day in the history of the City Council. In fact, quite an embarrassment that had the opportunity to take youths, give them summer jobs, put them to work, and really give them life experience and give them some money. And that wasn't going to happen under the council's scenario that you were working under. So, I pushed that forward. Again, we're starting to see an uptick in some of the Part 1 crimes in the city, where we have done very well in comparison to other communities. These activities, why we've done better than other communities is our housing program, stuff we're doing in code enforcement, other broader-based engagement that creates stability in the neighborhood and displace some of the negative activities. And so where we have the ability to fix up housing, do job and workforce creation, they're significant. And we're in August. The reality is, even if everybody agreed on this tonight, you wouldn't be able to do most of these until mid-September at best, by the time you get it passed, get the contract signed, get things out. And these things do have an impact. And we have to be cognizant of that going forward. So I don't mind waiting 2 weeks, bringing forth the other projects, the other things, so that we can look at it, discuss it. If you want it to do it tonight, I don't know, put a call on the development staff, or the chief will send a police car to their house, have them come back in. No, I'm serious. Let's stop this, and if you want to do it, I expect the staff to be available to make things happen here. If you want to wait 2 weeks, we'll also do it. But if you want to do it tonight, I expect the staff to rise to the occasion to whatever we need to follow through on.
Mr. Williams.
I think it's worth stopping that we're still in the midst of a pandemic. And there are many facets of lead times and manufacturing issues that are outside of our control.
Yep.
And regardless of how fast we sprint to getting answers to the community, those efforts could be for naught. Like we don't know, and that's just part of the complexity with being a public servant in 2022. We're very reactionary to how the environment is shaping the boundaries of our decision-making abilities. So I am receptive to the mayor's comment, but again, it's our hands are tied in certain areas. And I think for me, not looking past my current tenure on the city council, I think it is important in me being intentional that I would like to look at all the projects collectively.
Ms. Patrick.
Well, so I just want to say that, I'm just guessing. given our track record, that in 2 weeks, we'll be presented with materials, and I can pretty much think that it's going to take some time to look through those materials. So I think that we won't be making a decision in 2 weeks either. It's just basically how I feel.
You may not make a blanket decision in 2 weeks, but if we could start to chip away and prioritize, say, okay, we've got a consensus on Project A, let's move that forward. Project B, and then at some point, we run out of money. It's the other side of it. So what projects have the biggest multiplier, have the biggest impact on the city budget in a positive way, or create jobs across the board? You know, we're not going to be able to give money to everybody. We all know that, and it's just part of the decision making. And Mr. Williams is correct with the pandemic, where some of these things that we would like to have happen tomorrow, even if we all agreed, are not going to happen because of other factors that are at play within the market and just global politics and supply chain.
Ms. Porterfield?
And I just want to clarify that every single council member got the drive to download all the applications that were submitted. Alex sent that out. And in addition, Mr. Palomini asked for the recommendations from the development, and Ms. Diop sent that out. So we already have that information. We could go home today and start looking at that to see that. So we would have an opportunity to review it then. So, and we could also ask that the mayor's willing to call them back in today. So we could ask that the Department of Development have everything to us within a week, so we have an opportunity for a week ahead of time to be able to look at that, and not the Thursday before.
Okay, I misunderstood. I thought we were going to get a chance to see what the committees.
Yes, the
We have not seen
recommendations. Okay.
Correct? I
Correct.
do not think that we have seen.
Okay.
The
Well, they're
recommendations
in
of
this,
the committees.
and Ms. Michael can send that out to you.
Oh, you have that information?
Yes, I sent you an email saying we got it in, yes.
I thought you sent, okay, so.
Remember I sent the email to say we
Yes,
received it,
delivered
it was sent to
council last
development?
week.
Yes, so she has that, and she can send it out to everyone.
Okay.
I will ask that be sent out. That probably should have been sent out regardless. I don't know when it was received, but it should have been sent out, in my opinion, at that time. But if you would please send that out, so everybody has a copy to be able to look at that.
Yeah, I don't know why it wasn't sent out either. We did receive that email
Okay, we'll
right
send
before
it out.
council last week. but-
Oversight, we'll send it out. I thought that would be, my thought was that we would get all the recommendations sent to us all at one time, the city, the Department of Development, including, they say there's other information about, like, some things they can't move forward because of the funding, and we do it all at once. But if you would like that separately,
Sure.
that's fine.
Okay.
She'll send it to the entire council.
Mr. Parker?
I don't want us to get so caught up in it's important that we all have access to the information so we can make informed decisions. I agree with that. I just think that, we can play a dangerous game of falling into kind of like the gotcha moment of what should have happened, and I just don't think that lends itself well to the work that is ahead of us. So I just want to be clear about that. And I also think that, we all are responding to, I have a lot of trust in the mayor and his team around, on recommendations, and a lot of trust in the community, community members that were assembled to, make sure that what we were doing was representative of their voices. And I don't think that those ideas are, opposing one another. I think that they complement each other and ensure a more equitable process. And I just want to make sure that we keep our eye on that and as a priority.
All right, so it looks, unless there's some correction, looks like we will wait 2 weeks, correct? All right, well then we will move on. Next is amending the code for the section 248-101-C regarding redeeming of off-road vehicles. There's a public hearing on the 25th of July. I don't believe there were any comments for that. So we can move forward unless there's any comments. Questions? Have a motion.
So moved.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And next is fees for towing and storing off-road vehicles. Mr. Colby.
Thank you. As a side note, before I present, the information related to these fees that I'm going to be discussing tonight came from the police department. So this is not me making up any fees. This is provided by Assistant Chief Whipple. On August 8th, so next week, the City Council is going to be considering the ordinance to amend Section 248-101-C of the code to set towing and hauling fee and storage charges of off-road vehicles by resolution. Currently, the section of the code sets the fee at $70 per tow and haul and $20 per day for storage. The city is seeking to set the towing and hauling fee to $165. This is in line with the current tow fee that we have for automobiles. The tow companies need to use a flatbed truck to tow off-road vehicles since they're less stable than automobiles when towed, and the city is seeking to set the storage fee at $40 per day. This increase is due to the need for inside storage of off-road vehicles. So the proposed increase in fees does not have an administrative cost on the city. This is the amount that would be set to cover the towing costs that the companies are charging essentially the city, and then obviously the storage costs as well. While there has been an increase in the number of tickets issued and the confiscation related to illegal off-road vehicle usage, obviously this continues to be an issue in the city, and then these increased towing and storage fees are directly related to the costs, as I said. So looking to pass out of committee tonight a legislative request for the full council's consideration for a resolution setting the fees at $165 as the tow and haul fee and $40 per day storage fee.
Are there any questions? Have a motion.
So moved.
I'll second it. All in favor? Aye. Next is a discussion of noise violation issues. As we all know, that would be me. As we all know, noise issues are one of the biggest complaints in the city. I think we all probably get those complaints. So how to deal with this situation is complex, right? And one way of going about it is to use technology. We have some of that in place with the smart cities technology, where we can use decibel meters or sound measurement devices. I want to be clear, these are not recording or voice recording devices. They are strictly decibel levels, because that is a concern and a legitimate one. So how can we use this technology to help with some of the issues that we have in the city? I know in my neighborhood there was music blasting over a half mile away. We paced it out. And you could hear it in my house with the air conditioning on, the television on, and the windows closed, as if I was playing it loudly in my own home. I'm not the only one that's in this situation. Every single neighborhood has these issues. So how can we go about addressing it? The technology lends itself to help deal with some of these issues. It reduces the interaction, which would largely be a negative interaction, with the police department and people who are violators. So that is one good aspect of people who probably don't want to be told to turn down the music, and let's be honest, sometimes they are drinking and not always the best situation to have a confrontation. Technology would allow us to alleviate that issue. We have the ability with our technology, but also supplementing it with low power, wide area radio receivers that could be integrated into our network servers. This would allow us to triangulate and figure out where the noise violation is coming from. Other cities, I think, are using this. There is ability with artificial intelligence to identify sounds. There's a major project in New York City, I believe it's called Sony, where they are identifying all the sounds, and it allows the artificial intelligence to figure out, is this just a police siren, or is it loud music? Is it just somebody arguing, whatever? Now this was just a discussion item to see if we could move forward, at least getting some cost estimates as to how expensive this would be, because quite frankly, we need to do something. Enforcement is a major issue. And the only other way I foresee being able to do this would be to hire a lot of police officers, which would be very expensive. And again, those interactions probably wouldn't be the most positive. We could use the data that we collect, put it into a GIS system in order to create an environmental noise assessment that allows us to develop a soundscape approach and figure out where the real problems are. Not that they're limited to one particular area, as I said before, they're all around every single neighborhood. So my recommendation would be to ask the mayor and his team to come up with some sort of cost estimate in 4 weeks so that we could further discuss whether or not this would be something we would like to pursue. Are there any questions? Yes.
So how would the police department, I'm assuming they would be somehow involved in this, and I didn't really get that from your explanation. So how would the police department be involved in this process in terms of pulling this together?
For the time being, you could code the software so that a violation, whatever we dictate, what would be a violation? Right now, I'm just making up numbers. Let's say it's a half hour of a decibel above, let's say 90. Again, just making up numbers. And there's 30 minutes of noise above 90. And it's identified not to be a lawnmower or something along those lines. A message goes directly to the police, it's put into the system, because quite frankly, a lot of people have just given up on calling the police because a lot of times they don't show up. That doesn't correct the problem, but at least it is put into the system where they can put it into our DDAC system. The other aspect is that we are moving towards a technology, and if we get that state approval for the home rule, there is ability to identify violators and have the ticket sent right to the house at some point down in the future. The technology is moving that way in a rapid manner.
I guess my follow-up question, were the police involved in all of your pulling this together? Have there been conversations with the police department regarding that?
No, the reality is the enforcement aspect is the biggest problem we have. I know that I did have a brief conversation with the chief, and he is favorable of not having officers have to deal with these type of situations because of the interaction. But he did not provide any, I guess, meaningful or any substantive comments or criticism other than that. Yes.
So when I think about noise complaints, and a lot of different types of noises, music, people in their cars, Harley Davidson, motorcycle, there's so many different. I think about how would this technology impact that person's quality of life in the moment? I guess I'm wondering so really wouldn't replace.
Just so I understand, are you meaning the neighborhood or the violator?
so if, like, the people who came down to our meeting, they were really upset about, them, having to call the police, and they were saying that, are paraphrasing, but they weren't satisfied that anything had been done. So I'm wondering, I wouldn't want to, if I can't sleep at night and there's a robot that's going to send a ticket to my neighbor, 3 days later or something, I don't know how that, in the moment.
So, very, very good question. I actually thought quite a bit about that myself. So two things. So with the motorcycle, the cars, there is ability with LPRs to identify the vehicle, have a ticket sent directly to those individuals. As far as, let's say, I'm living next door to you and I'm blasting music and it's 2 a.m. and you're like, what the heck? The aspect of, are you going to be satisfied, for lack of a better word, immediately, the answer is no. But the only way to change this is behavioral change. And unfortunately, there's not a way to positively impact people to turn down their music. The only way would be through a fine and to try to get behavioral change that way. So it's more of a long-term play, but in my opinion, we need to really do something. So that's an excellent point. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering, I'm sure that this is, kind of further down in the conversation, but is there, because anytime I think about like that AI, I know that there's there's actually bias within those systems. It can be bias within those systems. So I just think about us being really intentional that whatever we're looking at, that we keep that lens for us to say that, okay, how are we going to ensure that this isn't disproportionate negative outcomes for a certain neighborhood, a certain demographic of our city. So that's just something I think.
Well, the AI is strictly determining what is the noise. And, regardless of neighborhood, that's going to pop up. So I think that's where the AI part plays. And it identifies music versus a lawnmower versus, we're just out on the porch talking, that kind of deal.
I can appreciate that, and I think that those are the questions that need to be asked, and maybe we just think about how do we set some checkpoints with that, because I think that if we're not intentional about, if we kind of just leave it to say the AI is only going to respond to this, I was looking at a Netflix special, because I'm really serious about where I cite my information from. But I remember they were talking about the bias that's happening, racial bias within AI systems. So I just want to be careful, because there can be certain type of music that can trigger something maybe different. And so it's just something that.
And that's where I totally see where you and appreciate that. Mine would be like a decibel level for a certain amount of time. I don't care what kind of music it is, if it's classical, country, or rap. If it's at 2 a.m. and I just don't want to hear it. So, but your point's well taken, Mr. Toro.
I run into it frequently in my neighborhood, from the street behind me on Briarwood and.
Turn your music down, Jerry. I was trying to tell you this.
Well, we can be vocally loud. Trust me, when we talk, the decibels get up there. So 1 o'clock in the morning Saturday, we started off as a little girl's birthday party, and 1 o'clock in the morning my daughter's pulling me back into the house. Because again, calling, even the non-emergency 911, I know at 1 o'clock in the morning there's other calls going on in the city. And by the time they respond, it might be 3-4 hours later, although they were still up, my neighbors, with their music loud. But again, I don't, again, should we want to be cautious about neighborhoods and where we're targeting, but it's about the noise. And our friends on Swan Street, I've been there 3 times now, different hours of the night. Earlier in the night, I don't know, I do a lot of undercover work, but anyway, later at night or whatever, just to report the loud music and the code violations across the street. With the carts there, 30, 40 price chopper carts, So we need to take this all into consideration, no matter what neighborhood. What is your entitlement that you think you can play loud music even at 2 in the afternoon? let alone 2 in the morning. So I think it's a plan. Thank you.
So all I'm asking is that the mayor would, in 4 weeks, see if your staff could provide some information for us.
But it might be good to, we do a briefing for the council for some of the things that we're working on, trying to put together. Again, my message to staff and community as a whole is trying to identify high needs individuals in high needs locations that drive our cost, whether it's policing, whether it's EMS services, whether it's social services, whether it's resources within the school district. And again, it's this broad smart city deployment that has a lot of moving parts in it. We, right now, the acoustical sensors that we have placed, we're going through and trying to match up events with known gunshots. I've stayed away from ShotSpotter. A ShotSpotter only will use the information for gunshots. You know, it's very important. You know, God forbid people are firing a gun, even worse, somebody gets hit. But the reality in life is there are other acoustical events that are annoying or significant. An auto crash produces a significant acoustical signature. Again, loud music does that. I don't know if any of you had any complaints on fireworks.
No, very well. Oh, I think they this year.
You know, it's unfortunate that people make bad choices. And how do we do the education to bring some stability? But to, again, go through some of the things that we are doing with emergency medical services, with the optical sensors, we're getting a huge amount of robust data in terms of not only vehicle counts, which is important in terms of managing traffic flow and planning out the timing, but the speed of those vehicles. And so we've never had all this information before. We've just had it isolated. So now it's to be able to put it together in a citywide, more of a dynamic model, and then allocate the resources not necessarily on who is complaining the loudest, but who is actually being adversely affected the most. So might be on Mr. Williams Street that he thinks everything is terrible, but then Mr. Farley actually has the higher stats on his street. And it's how do you match that up so that we can, again, message that so that we want people to just do the right thing. And how do you get that out? And you know, it seems like a simple goal and objective, but people make bad choices. And so it may be that whether we do it as a separate meeting or as a break off of the council meeting, it could, you know, a full briefing would could easily go a couple of hours.
Nice.
So what the council wants, if you want it broken down into segments, or you want to do it one evening or afternoon, so that you may have a better understanding of things that we're doing and the evolutionary nature of all the data that we're collecting. And this presentation tonight by Chief Sieber is one of those components. How do you manage all this information? How do you manage the body cameras? How do you manage the in-car video? How do you manage the evidence? And some of this coming in from the acoustical sensors or optical sensors in the city, we wanted to be able to integrate into this platform so that it becomes usable information that, whether it's the police department, the fire department, code enforcement, city council can look at it when you're formulating policy, or when they're assigning police officers to a zone or a particular problem. So yeah, I look forward to following up on that, even though maybe a two-step process to give you more of the information that we're working on, and then be able to take this to the next step.
So, Mayor, if you were going to do that presentation, which I would welcome to know where we are with smart city technology and what we're doing with that. Haven't heard about that in a little bit. So would that be open also to the public? Because obviously this is a major concern that they have as well, so.
Yeah, generally, yes.
Okay. So in that case, I would say it would be a separate meeting, just focused specifically on that.
Mr. Williams. Oh, Mr. Williams.
So I'd say for me, I don't necessarily think we need to have like technology or some like expansive satellite to find out that if you were like in communities, they'd tell you it's Joe in the red house every day from 9 to 11. He's blasting music. I think as a parent, where the issues are emanating from, I think listening to this solution, I think there are two separate issues of music that's being transported, vehicles, and then music that is in your households. And I agree that if there's any option where we can evaluate just how to make it a better living environment for our residents, we need to entertain that. I don't know if you remember, Citizen Action has the ability to allow people to interact with the police department. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chief Siebert, AC Siebert, but I think evaluating how we can exploit those services, which we are going to pay a significant fee for, to see how we can utilize that in comparison with what Mayor McCarthy is saying collectively, with not adding another platform to an already data cumbersome area. So I think for me, it's wanting to make sure we're not shifting resources and city staff time to solve seasonal issues. If you're driving a Harley, blaring down the road during the winter, power to you. But I think parties can occur throughout the year, and I want to make sure that any policies we're pushing forward for reducing those instances that I've recognized have been coming to our rail multiple times, citing the woman that came last week.
Mr. Farley.
So I would agree on and say that, you know, the first part of enforcement should really be engagement, right? So that's to Ms. Porterfield's point, like having the community open to the community, let them come in and ask questions, but the last thing they want me to do is try to explain something technical to them, you know, in a way that they'll be able to comprehend. But I really think that if we engage the community, then that also, I don't want to replace that importance of just kind of those natural organic conversations that happen and should happen among neighbors. And then, you know, this, you know, we'll be dealing with more of the outliers, you know, to the mayor's point.
Well, I would say that these are not seasonal issues. To your point, the community largely knows whether or not music or noise is too loud or not, and knows whether or not they are, I don't know what the right word is, I'll say behaving. It's not a good term, but I think you understand what I'm getting at. In terms of respecting their neighborhood and their neighbors. This, quite frankly, we need to do something. And it's not always the same individuals. It oftentimes is, but not always. And quite frankly, there is an increasing problem with the noise. So I think it's worth investigating, and I agree with Ms. Porterfield. I would want this discussion to be public and have people have the ability to hear what we have in terms of smart cities, ability to address this issue. But I also like this to be narrowed down to these particular issues, because smart cities is a rabbit hole. And so if we can confine them to, yes, overall briefing, but largely addressing these issues, that would be appreciated. Mr. Williams.
And the meeting's already long, so just because it comes up routinely, since we have a lot of people tuning in, I think a lot of people try to discredit our police department and say that the response times are due to them not caring, and I think that is important that we say that is not the case. I think when you look at calls as they come in waves and bunches, unfortunately these types of issues are placed lower where they need to respond to other situations. But I definitely would like to say that our police department is actively working with what they have. I think looking at means to better support them is within our measure.
These are certainly priority 3 calls, but important nonetheless. All right, so can I have a motion to adjourn finance?
So
I'll second it. We are adjourned.
please say all those in favor.
What's that?
You should say all those in favor.
Oh, all those in favor, thank you.
So I'd like to call the order of government operations. We have one item on the agenda, and that is amending the city ordinance a reminder, and that's going to be by President or Madam President Porterfield.
Just a reminder, this, that there's going to be a public hearing this coming Monday regarding the residency requirements, whether we should be expanding those to the county in order to increase our workforce. So thank you.
Any questions, thoughts? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to,
I'll move it.
Okay. I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to recess government operations.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.
I'd like to call Health and Recreation to order. We have one item on the agenda, and that has to do with the Music Haven event that's coming up. And so I'll turn this over to Ms. Porterfield.
Thank you. Received, I'm sure, received an email from Ms. Golub regarding the Summer of Soul, which is going to happen on August 20th. And there was actually a resolution that was given by the Senate, I believe. Yes, the U.S. Senate. And so she thought it would be a great idea for us to do something locally. I agree with that. So I'd like us to be able to present a resolution at that event from the City Council.
Is that, so I need, well, we can make a motion to that. I thought, it's Mr. Brown and Mr.
Toro.
Oh, Ms. Toro.
Yes, I can.
I'm sorry, I looked at the wrong, you want to make the motion? I need a second on that?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now I look for a motion, sorry about that. A motion to adjourn this meeting?
I'll move it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to reconvene City Development and Planning. So now we have 8 items left, and the first item would be the remediation of city property. Mr. LaFawn.
Good evening. The legislative request you have in front of you tonight is to move forward with remediation of city property, which is Foster Avenue. It is the storage facility that we have to clean up per DEC. We've been using it for years, and we store our dirt there, our spoils from water breaks and everything else, and it's just gotten to be an eyesore. And we received 2 bids. One of the lowest responsible bidders is Carter Associates for $197,145.
So, Mr. LaFawn, if I remember correctly, this came before us several weeks ago with a much higher bid.
Yep, and we modified some things where we're going to use most of the material on site. The bidders had questions, they went out to bid again. We extended the bid a couple times to answer questions and to try and get the best price. And the one bid still came in at roughly $587,000, and the second bid came in at $592,000. So we all know that the company is a responsible bidder. They do a lot of work for us, and I'm confident they'll do a good job.
So, but they didn't come, they came at this 197.
Correct, they came in at 197.
Is there any reason that there was such a huge difference?
I think the huge difference was what they were going to move off-site. What we did, we have a alternate now to move off-site, it's $250. So they were putting everything as a lump sum the first time, with the assumption that X number of yards is going to have to be moved and transported off-site. We're going to do some work right there where some of the, what we call 2-inch minus, will be used on-site to grade and fill and put a berm.
Huge amount of difference.
We saved some money.
Okay. Mr. Toro.
And I thank you for looking out for the cost of the city. Thank you. Absolutely. Good deal.
Any other questions, comments?
That seems like quite a significant savings just by reframing things. So I appreciate that.
I'll take the motion.
I'll move it.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda is authorize the issuance of a revocable permit number 672 to Moisture Realty LLC for a sign and awnings that will cover the city's right-of-way at 140 Clinton Street. Mr. Wallen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This is a revocable permit for an awning and a sign overhanging the right-of-way on Clinton Street. The building is currently under construction renovations. It has seen several tenants. It's adjacent to the Laz lot. There are some awnings on the Laz lot, but that is not the city's right-of-way, but they are represented in the renderings and sketches that are there. The awnings are made of metal frame with a tin. They're a little bit different than what we typically have, which is some kind of a canvas. These are a little bit more of a harder metal, but still, they could be revoked if needed. They are temporary almost in nature, so it falls under this permit, and there was no objections by planning. So,
This is just kind of an inquiry. Did this used to be Moisture Salon? Is it the same person?
I don't know about that actually.
Okay.
Yes, so Ron Soriano owns the Moisture Salon on
It's on, that's on Barrett.
on Barrett.
This is this is
he's
not the
opening-
same.
Right, he's opening a deli, so it must be the LLC that he has there. And
Okay.
as far as the awnings were concerned, I did recommend to him not to go with canvas, because icicles that fall, anything canvas, the icicles go right through the building, so.
Okay.
Yeah, something a little heavier, yeah.
So this-
And- I'm sorry.
No, I said what, Moisture Realty.
Right, because I knew there was a
Yes.
Moisture Salon.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll move it.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, the next item is to authorize the mayor or his designee to enter into a supplemental agreement with the New York State Department of Transportation for the construction of the Brandywine Avenue safety improvement. Mr. Wallen?
Yes, 2 weeks ago I was here and we looked to authorize Brandywine Avenue to Count and Industries for a base bid. I took that information, brought it to the DOT, and the DOT took that bid, put that information into a supplemental agreement between us and the state. That is for the federal aid. As you see, this is a Schedule A here. Of the project, the base bid was $1.7 million. We were able to increase our federal aid. It was originally around 1.2. We were able to get an additional $300,000 of federal aid allocated to it. And so now we have a total of $1.53 million, right here. And the total cost is 1.7. So there will be a city share on the project. The city share is anticipated around $300,000. We're going to use our state CHIPS money to cover that. That is an eligible expense, and we have enough of it to do that. So it was almost like a 50-50 split with the state for the cost overruns. I see this as becoming something in the future on some of these federal projects because inflation and cost increases are high. So we're going to have to put a little bit in, but at the end of the day, we're getting $1.5 million, which is great.
Any questions? I'll take a motion.
I'll move it.
I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Wallen. Next item on the agenda is discussion of the hosting quarterly city council meetings outside of City Hall. Follow-up, Mr. Williams.
Thank you. So I'm excited to state that I feel confident this is our second to last meeting to discuss this before we finalize some details. I told you I'd get some information about the topic, and I gathered the following. I think prioritizing the last week of September 26th to 30th, provides enough opportunity for people in the city to return back from their vacations. And I've deconflicted so far. I prefer a Tuesday, but I'm still finalizing those details to make sure that there are no events that we are conflicting against. I've got a tentative confirmation from Shane Barbie at the Boys and Girls Club. Put a message out to Superintendent Sawyer. Unfortunately, I've not heard back from him. However, Shane was able to state that Open Stage Media was able to come by and assess their space to confirm that they were able to stream our town hall meeting. Additionally, I've also changed the narrative. I think that was a point of contention to make sure we weren't promoting or inadvertently taking a stance prior to these discussions with the community. So I think housing crisis accurately categorizes what we're trying to hear from the community. With that, I'm in agreement with getting with Mr. Colvin and making sure that that narrative is captured within the announcement or press release. I think come the next meeting, I can have firm dates from either or both the Boys and Girls Club and the high school. And then I'm leaning against having a public speaker just due to the anticipated volume of not wanting to be at a town hall meeting for an extended period of time. I think 2 hours is sufficient to kind of gauge how this process is going to go, but I think continue on with our current format of 3 minutes per speaker, asking people to send in written statements if they so choose, but allowing people to just speak their truths and step down to allow time for the rest of the people to speak. Some of the other logistical items, such as moving our tables, having a podium, that's, I think, a smaller detail, but what I'm asking is just seeing how everyone feels about those items. That way, next meeting, it is just voting for whether we'd like to host it at the Boys and Girls Club or at the high school. I'm open to any questions.
At the last time we discussed this, you were going to send out to everybody on the council as to our availability. So before you finalize a date, if you would do that, please.
Absolutely.
Mr. Toro?
I love the housing crisis issue, since a lot of people are facing homelessness and things, so I do like that. Do you have a preference, I mean, as far as transportation or people in neighborhoods, whether it's the school or the Boys and Girls Club? Have you thought about that at all? Would it be easier for, people to get there? Yeah.
I was using it as a dual purpose opportunity to just
Sure.
showcase this resource that exists in our community. I think
Right.
still a lot of people don't know that there's this huge facility that's in our backyards.
Right.
I think absolutely on my part, I was going to try and coordinate transportation to see if people could carpool, and just bringing yourself is not appropriate. Bringing your neighbor or bringing someone you know, but then also not physically feeling like you have to be there. I think that's why prioritizing sending emails. And also people being carriers for others. So I think it's very much embracing a community push to make sure if you're working and you can't attend, if you're out of town and you can't attend, making sure people are collectively gathering thoughts and bring those.
Good, thank you.
Yes, Ms. Patrick?
So you said no speakers, you just want to take input from the community, you don't want to have any representatives from any groups, basically make brief presentations. You're just looking to have like an open mic with us just listening and not speaking ourselves, right?
I think if we had booths for people to serve as resource pods, I think that's more appropriate rather than having them take up some of the precious time. This is just after our meeting on Monday. So definitely starting off the week, I think it's going to be draining to an extent. So I think being just more intentional with trying to gather efficiencies. I think absolutely having people either come early or stay late, and then also having kind of us being censors and pushing out that throughout our social pools.
Oh, I don't have to raise my hand. My commitment. And I thought the other thing that we should also do is have some information from the various, to have, if people can't come, but the various organizations that provide housing, provide support for housing, to have them there. And additionally, I was at a meeting regarding housing with another entity, and there's Assistant Attorney General who is kind of looking at this as well. So I'll be reaching out to her if she's open to it. Perhaps she could just send some information regarding that. And I know you didn't want a public speaker, but that might be a person who does it statewide and maybe somebody that could come. So I would offer that, but if that's not something we want to move towards, we don't have to, but I would definitely still get information from them. Mr. Farley.
So I just want to say that, we started, this conversation was around housing stabilization, which is definitely under the umbrella of the housing crisis. I want to make sure that none of that is lost in the conversation. I don't want it to cast such a wide net that we don't allow people to speak onto what has initially started to discuss at this table. So.
I think that first of all, we won't be able to censor people's comments. So when we talk about that, unless they swear, but when they talk about that, I think they're going to bring whatever their issue is around housing. And so when you can't pay your rent, that's a crisis.
Oh, absolutely.
And, so I think that we would definitely be able to be open to all of that. So at this point in time, Mr. Williams, you will
Reconvene in 2 weeks with firm draft public announcements for us to elect which one to choose.
And Mr.
Oh, yeah, I
Palomino,
apologize. Yep, there are your updates.
he wa- the dates, yes. Any other discussion around this? Nothing? Okay. The final items are for executive session for the sale of property. So at this time, I would ask that we go into executive session.
So moved.
Second. Okay, we're in executive session. The public will have to leave.
That's it. We will actually
Back in, cleaned up the lead.
Oh, what is